My name is Dana. I, what about me? I've had a very interesting life. I, for a very long time, had body image issues that began in childhood. Um, I grew up in an abusive family. And I also had neglect. I had physical, emotional, several different types of abuse, verbal abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, starting at the age of 3. So a lot of the issues that I had as far as my body was concerned and as far as my eating was concerned related to the abuse that I had during those years. I spent a lot of time struggling with the way that I saw myself, which was the body dysmorphia, where I would see myself in one way, but what actually was there was not what I saw, and struggled with my weight up and down after high school, especially. I've got 2 kids. I have spent the last several years researching different ways to heal myself. I've had several different health issues. And so my struggle has been that I've been trying to find some kind of balance between my body, my mind, and my spirit. And what I've found is that it's taken a combination of holistic practices as well as traditional medical practices in order for me to get in tune with my body. And now I'm to the point where I don't have my eating disorders anymore. I don't have body dysmorphia. I did go through decades of traditional therapy and was not able to really make a lot of headway on the issues that I had. And the most significant healing that I've done has been over the last few years with changing my mindset. And so that's what I really kind of delved into in order to basically become the best version of myself. My social medias, I think, are you gonna have them listed? I don't remember what any of my stuff, what
One of
any
them
of
is
my stuff is.
Twisty Mama, and she has a fantastic story about Twisty Mama.
So, oh,
So
see, now you're
there you
making me
go.
blush. So, the reason why my name is Twisty Mama, that's my Instagram name, is about, let's see, about 12 years ago, maybe it's 15 years ago, I I decided I wanted to learn how to knit randomly. Like I'm like, I need a hobby and I need something to do. I just gotten divorced from my first husband. I've been married twice. So I got divorced from my first husband and I'm like, I need something to occupy my time. So I learned how to knit. And when I made my Instagram name, the play is that I have a dark and twisty, sort of sarcastic sense of humor. And so it's a combination of that along with twisting for knitting and different types of knitting techniques that you use involve twisting the yarn. And so that's how Twisty Mama became my Instagram name. So
I think that's a
it's
cool story.
interesting, but
Yeah, you told me it was cute, so I think it's a cute story. You
okay,
know,
then I'm true. Then I'm accurate in what I say.
there you go. We all have nicknames, and I'm not going to share one of mine right now, but we all have stories. And I know for you, when you shared the body transformation that you're going through and some of the difficulty that you raised, I remember growing up and some of the difficulties that I faced, and I wonder if that led me to always being that skinny kid that people maybe could pick on, right? Like I shared with you, I was like 120 pounds. I was like nothing in high school when it came to that. And then I decided that I got to do something about this frame because if I'm going to stay this way, I'm probably going to be a target. No one's going to find me attractive. I'm not going to get married. I'm not going to have 2.5 kids, dog named Sparky, and all this other good stuff, right? But for you, Dana, like you share that there was different types of abuse. So what do you think? What role do you think that played maybe in you seeing yourself the way that you did at a young age?
Oh, that was 100% the voices of the people in my family. So I'm the oldest of five kids, and I have a twin sister. We are fraternal, so we actually look almost opposite of each other. Where our personalities are different. We're basically similar to just being sisters. We just happen to be born at the same time. Um, and there was a lot of competition. I have three brothers, the oldest of the three. I'm the oldest of all of my siblings. So I'm the oldest of five. And because of that, I stepped into the role as parent because my parents were not always there. So I started being the adult early. And then, siblings being siblings, the first way to get at your sibling is you look for their, sensitive pink area that you can just stab. Well, at least that's what it was like in my family. So the oldest of my three brothers was probably the harshest. Him and my dad um, called me fat a lot. I was not. Um, they called me ugly a lot. And so those words, when you hear them consistently, even if they're not your words, become the voice inside your head. And that's what it became for me is I spent a lot of years feeling very insecure and feeling very like I wanted to hide. And what ended up happening was I abused my body in the process. Because of the neglect, I developed binge eating habits. So I would eat and eat and eat and eat and eat because what I later realized was there were times where I didn't know when I was going to eat and when I was growing up. And so because of that, when I had food available, I would try and fill myself up, but it was also the sadness that I was trying to stuff down inside of me. So it was, creating this wall to keep people away. And it was just all of these different things that were all going on in my mind. But all of those things going on in my mind affected everything in my body. And that's been the hardest thing to change. The physical part of it, that was difficult, but the mental part of it was far more difficult and took much longer for me to heal.
I know there's some women who I've spoke to about that, and they say something similar where they were trying to find ways to maybe cope with it. So, for example, one person would eat and eat and eat, and it's like that joke, right? You're gonna eat your problems because when you look at food, you're like, okay, this is them calling me ugly, this is them calling me fat, this is all this other stuff, and you're making it disappear, even though in reality it's still around because the people saying that are still doing it. And then another person said that terrain one thing that I did, and I got trapped in it, is that I started to look outside of my family for attention and validation. And this
Yep.
person ended up having, trying to be politically correct, not get canceled. They were having a number of partners because they were giving
Mm-hmm.
them that attention, right? They're saying, "Oh, you look pretty," even though they're the men in this case were just saying it to get what they wanted to get. So after they got
Mm-hmm.
that and the person realized, that's when they're like, "Hey, now I'm starting to feel the same way that my brother, that my father, that my sister, that my mother made me feel." But the difference is that I can numb that feeling
Mm-hmm.
with the next person and the next person and the
Right.
next meal. Like, is that something, not necessarily maybe the sexual part, if you did go through that, but the
Oh,
eating, was that something that you were doing?
absolutely. So here's my perspective on that. So my perspective is those are all self-harming behaviors. Okay. Whether it's food, whether it's shopping, they're addictive tendencies that we have because we get a dopamine hit, because it makes us feel good in the moment. And then once we have, oh, I just got the chills. Once we have that dopamine hit where we feel really good, then we have to chase that high. So it's just like drugs. It's just like it doesn't matter what the substance is, and food is just as bad because, if you think about what's in fast food, if you think about quick and easy food, is not what makes you healthy. It is not what it basically sustains you, but you get this rush because of all the fat and the grease, and it makes you feel all good, and then you feel kind of bad afterwards. And I feel like for me, so I had several addictive tendencies. I had food tendencies, I had alcohol binges. I didn't do a lot of drugs, but I did, some stuff here and there, nothing serious. I was the type of person that I knew I had an addictive personality, so that kind of kept me away from a lot of drugs because I knew that if I started something and it made me feel really good, it was going to be really hard to stop. I used to smoke. Like I've done a lot of things. I used to be a compulsive shopper, and I would always, with every single one of those things, you feel that rush when you do it. But then when that rush goes away, then you're looking for that next high. And like when I got divorced from my second husband, I did go through a period of time where I was dating someone off and on, and then we would split up, and then I would date like I would go on a lot of dates with a lot of different people because they were giving me attention. And this was after I'd had my weight loss surgery and after I'd lost a significant amount of weight. And my second husband, he's a wonderful man, but he liked me heavier. And so when I started to lose weight, we kind of grew apart because our interests changed. And so I didn't get a lot of physical attention. I didn't get a lot of emotional attention. I spent a lot of time by myself, and I was a stay-at-home mom at the time as well. So when I got divorced, I was like free, and I took advantage of it. And I don't regret any of my behaviors. I wish I would have valued myself more. But that's what I've really learned over the last several years that I've been doing this healing work on myself, is that when you truly love yourself unconditionally, you don't have to search outside of yourself. And what ends up happening is the good will come to you. So the good people will come to you. When you hate yourself, that's the energy that you're going to attract from other people. So you're going to attract people that want to take from you. And because you are looking for that validation, you're going to give whatever you can to keep them interested in you for that dopamine hit. But you can't sustain that. So then somebody gets overwhelmed, somebody leaves, and you're looking again for the next high. So I will say, across the gamut, I've done a lot of things, but all of those things have led me to where I am now. And you got to learn. So how else do you learn than by practice?
I will agree, and I think that's something like I guess people don't necessarily speak about, right? They don't speak about their own contribution to the situation that they're in. They're saying that, okay, you know what? Yes, I was being teased and being mistreated and being called all these names. But once I started to take things to change things, some people actually fall into a different type of abuse because now the abuse, instead of it coming from externally, it's internal. It's like, okay, you know what? I lost the weight. I look good. I'm sexy. Those guys that maybe a year ago who were saying I was fat and ugly, now they're coming around, right? And sometimes I think men and women who suffer from that, it's like they're reclaiming what was
Mhm.
done to them in a sense, right? Saying that, you know what, I was mistreated this way. Now I'm in a position and now maybe I have the power to create a little bit of chaos in other people's lives like I have my own. But when you realize that, hey, you know what, I'm going through this, I do need to make a change. Because I looked at when I was trying to gain weight and I was getting attention that I wasn't accustomed to. It's very easy to get caught up in it, right? And if you're not careful, like you said, right, like you have addicted tendencies, and for me, it was like, okay, I don't know how to navigate this. It's new. How do I do it? But because it's
Mhm.
new, you're curious. Okay, what if I just do it a little bit here, not so much there, right? And then you have to catch yourself. Like, how were you able to make sure that you didn't lose yourself in the moment when that was happening?
So I am a recovering people pleaser, and it took me a long time to stop doing that. So for me, even after I lost all this weight and people were complimenting, I still didn't see myself that way. I pretended I did. You know, they say fake it till you make it. And I acted like I did, but inside I still didn't feel worthy. And for me, I accepted attention from people that now I would look at and I would be like, why did I even talk to that? Like, I wouldn't even talk to that person now because I look more at character. And I mean, obviously, you want to be attracted to somebody that you're dating, but somebody's character matters a lot more to me than what they look like on the outside. And because I had such low self esteem, I took attention from people that gave it to me because I was desperate for that attention. And again, I needed that validation. So I, I feel like going to the opposite end and taking advantage of that quote unquote power that I might have portrayed myself as having, I didn't really have. Does that make sense?
It does,
So
because it reminds me of the story I told you with the $2, right? Like every other
yeah,
day, this girl was
yeah.
taking $2 from me. So you real like it's power that you have, but do you really have it? To your point, right?
Right, because it's all in your, I mean, your power is in your mind, truly. So it took until I found unconditional love for myself for me to truly feel like I had power. And now that I do have that unconditional love, and now that I do feel that I have that power, being the person that I am, I don't want to abuse that power. So I wouldn't take advantage of other people based on how what I think I could potentially get from them or how I could use them because that I try and live a very karma based life, you know, like following the golden rule. Like I truly do. I truly try to do unto others just because that's my character. And I would never want to take advantage of someone the way that people took advantage of me because I know what that feels like. And I would never want to inflict that on another person. And so I would rather be by myself and wait for the right person rather than take advantage of somebody where I could just, I mean, I'm sure if I put something up somewhere and I said, hey, I want somebody to take care of me financially, I'm pretty sure that I could probably get somebody that would want to do that. But I wouldn't want that because that would make me feel like a negative person. I wouldn't want to receive things that way.
It's like when I tell some of my female friends that if you were to go outside on the street corner, just put up a sign, wanted husband to take care of me, there will be enough men that's going to show up, right? Versus if I would have put
If
the sign, looking for a wife to take care of me, yeah, maybe one, maybe two, right? It's
I
a different
don't
experience.
know, I
Yeah.
don't know, I don't know.
Hey, we never know, right? I got the
It's
hair
the
and I got the
difference
beard.
between, that is true. It is the difference between quality versus quantity. And the thing is that it's really subjective. So you have to think about what you're wanting and then stick by that, you know? Like if you decide that you want a quality partner, but you keep going out with somebody because they tell you that you're pretty, then you're giving yourself mixed signals. So you're saying, I want somebody who's going to treat me like a 10, but then you're accepting behaviors that are like a 3. Well, you can't get a 10 if you're accepting a 3. You got to wait for the 10. But people want everything now. They don't want to put in the work. They don't want to make the effort. They want Mr. Right Now instead of Mr. Forever, you know? And maybe that's not what everybody wants. And whatever you want is what you want. But if you want a quality person in your life, whether that's a friendship, whether that's a relationship, then you need to give and have that outgoing energy so that you attract those quality people and then recognize when those lower vibrational, not as not as high quality as far as what they want to give you, people, you got to keep them out. But if you're lonely and you're sad and you just want somebody to hang out with because it's Friday night and you don't have anything to do and it's been a hard week and you need a hug or whatever, then, it's easy to accept the right now person rather than the Mr. Right or Ms. Right.
I wonder how difficult that could be for people who have gone months, years without the ability to attract necessarily what they want. Because let's say if we're sticking to, let's say, like body dysmorphia or body transformation, right? Like every time, if I put myself in that person's shoes, every time I look in the mirror, I'm unhappy with what I see. Year one, year two, year five. I then decide to make some changes. I'm loving what I see, but now I'm starting to get attention that I didn't necessarily get, or now I have options. So when I look at it from that perspective, I'm like, I went all these years not able to do it. Now I'm able to do it. That must be a hard choice for a lot of people to say, I can actually say yes now, right?
But I choose not to. I mean,
That's the
yes,
difference.
that's the difference, is that you always have a choice in what you bring in. You always have a choice. So if, like, what I kept finding was that I would think that I was like, oh, I've healed this, I'm good. And then I would start dating somebody. And what I started seeing was that I had patterns of behavior. And so I would slip into these patterns where when somebody would be nice to me for a certain amount of time, then I would be overly nice to them, to the point where I was giving way more to this person than they were giving to me. And what I had to do was I had to stop and recognize my behaviors and stop them, because when I was doing that, people weren't appreciating what I was giving them because I was giving too much. And so it was still that pattern of behavior where I was, overindulging for them, but they weren't doing the same for me. So a lot of it for me had to do with looking at reciprocity. So it didn't have to be 50-50, but if I'm giving you some type of energy, whether it's physical, emotional, verbal, whatever, all interaction to me, I look at as energy exchange. So if I'm giving you a certain level of energy exchange and what I'm getting back from you is not anywhere close, then I started pulling my energy back to see whether that person was going to step up and give me more. And if they didn't, then I realized that they were using me for what they could get. And it was a lot easier to walk away then. Because if I'm giving you 2/3 of my energy and I'm only keeping a third for me, and you're giving me a quarter, why am I wasting so much energy on you? Like, I could keep all of that and just be alone. And that's a hard thing for a lot of people to understand. I joined several, I've been in a couple different singles groups because the age that I am, a lot of my friends are married or with kids or stuff like that. So I don't have a lot of single friends. I'm in my mid 40s. So I don't have a lot of single friends that I go and like go, and I don't drink anymore. So, I had to find people to go do things with. But when I would do that, what I was finding is the quality of people that I was attracting in was not the quality of people that I wanted. And so for me, I had a certain level that I got to where I'm just like, I am not accepting anything less than this. I would rather be alone and focus on myself than put energy into somebody that's not going to do that. Because I had two ex-husbands, like I said, and I mean, they both could attest to this. I gave way more in the relationship than either one of them gave back. Now, they did give back, and I did that freely. But what I found was nobody appreciated it and everybody expected it. And that's the hard part.
Well, you've accomplished more than a lot of people, right? Like when you look at how many people actually are married, right? You have had two, regardless of how they've ended, right? Like I always, like some of my friends, since you mentioned it, they'll say that, well, this person is divorced once, this person is divorced three times. I'm like, yes, but they have been married. You haven't,
You
right? And
you
I've
learn
given
what
the
not to do.
exactly, and I gave the example. It's like you're playing a sport, right? First place is marriage, second place, let's say common law, third place is long-term dating, fourth place is you're single until you die, essentially, right? For whatever the reason. I'm not saying it's good, bad, if I'm just ranking them. So if someone's been married and has been divorced, they've won for a period of time, right? And then it's ended. Like it's like anything. It's like any dynasty. They win all the championships and eventually they stop winning the championships. That's just life.
Mhm.
But for the person who has never won the championship to look down on the person who's won it, it's kind of odd. It's like you haven't even been able to get to this level, right? And the reason why I highlight that is I've noticed a difference between the thinking of my married friends and my single friends, right? Like my married friends are very focused, very determined. Okay, they know what their goals are, this and that. A lot of my single friends, it's like if it happens, it happens. They're like winging it. And the reason why I bring this up is that I wouldn't want to be in a situation where I've been dating for 20 years and I'm still dating, right? Whereas in your situation or someone like you've dated, you got married. It didn't work out. Okay, fine. You dated, then you got married. So you've at least won, then tried again, and then won again. Whereas someone who's just serial dating for 20 years, you're gonna look up one day and be like, hey, what has actually happened in my life?
So I have definitely have something to say about that. So my question would be, if you are a serial dater like that, or you are a person that doesn't date at all and you don't know why you're not dating, then there's something that you're doing that is blocking you from having that. Everybody has somebody. Everybody has somebody. So if you're not achieving the goals that you want to achieve, then you really need to do some introspection and find out, okay, because that's literally what I did when I got divorced from my second husband. I followed society's rules. Okay. I did everything that I was supposed to do exactly by the book. My first divorce was not my choice. My ex-husband cheated on me with somebody that was much younger. He gaslighted me and told me that like it was nothing. It was somebody that he worked with. I found out that was a lie. It was a very traumatic experience. And I was terrified after that because here I was, so I have two kids. So my oldest was 4 when this happened. So I became a single mom at 4. That wasn't by my choice. I didn't get a choice in that. You can't stay married to somebody that doesn't want to stay married to you. That to me is the worst thing that you could possibly, that is a nightmare. That is a living nightmare to be in a relationship where you know that person doesn't want to be with you. So each time that something like that happened in my life, each time that I had this event where it knocked me back, I had to stop and I had to go, okay, I can't control anything except myself. I can't control what my ex-husband did, no matter how hard you try. You can only control your thoughts, feelings, and actions for yourself. And everybody has their own narrative. So it doesn't matter what the situation is, but you need to look at what you're doing and you really need to take responsibility. And people have a hard time admitting the things that are broken about them. And then trying to figure out how to fix those things is even harder. So that's actually something that I've recently started is I actually am starting a coaching business that involves mindset coaching, health and wellness coaching, um, spiritual coaching, and basically I can intuitively help people figure out where their blocks are, and I can give them tools specifically for them to remove those blocks. But in order to do that, it's hard. It's a lot of work. And I'm going to tell you right now, it was a lot of dark places that I went. It was a lot of crying. It was a lot of releasing anger and resentment that I had towards other people that I knew were never going to apologize for the things that they did. So the first thing I had to do was let go of wanting an apology from them because I was never going to get it. If I needed that for closure, I would be chasing that forever. So I had to find peace with that. So for me, it's what are you doing? What do you want? And how do you get there? Those are the top three questions that I would say. If you are not achieving what you want to achieve in any area of your life, whether it's your physical appearance, your relationships, your career, it doesn't even matter. You need to stop and need to ask yourself those three questions. And once you ask yourself those questions, you need to be honest with the answers because you can't fix what you don't admit. And if you sugarcoat everything, you're not going to fix it. You're going to keep getting the same results. And the universe is going to keep sending you these people as lessons until you get sick of it. And that's kind of where I got. Like, I just got tired of people using me all across the board. It wasn't just in relationships, romantic relationships. It was friendships. It was family. It was romantic relationships. It was everywhere. It was jobs. Like, I gave more to everybody than they deserved. So I really had to look at why I was doing that. And it was hard and it was painful. But fear is what keeps a lot of people from doing that because it's easier. It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't, right? So you know that you're miserable and you know you don't like what's going on, but that's your comfort area. And you don't know what's on the other side of that. And the other side on that, your brain is telling you, oh, that's going to be worse. Why do you even want to try that? That's going to be way worse. But if you take a minute and you sit in it and you figure it out and you deal with it, and then you give those emotions a little hug and then send them on their way, you get to the other side. And I'm going to tell you, the other side is way better than staying stuck. It's scary. It's kind of like going through a haunted house. You know, the lead up to it is real. Your anxiety is going and you're like, I don't know what I'm going to think about this. And then you go through it and you're kind of scared for a little while. And then you get done and you look back on it and you're like, well, that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. It's exactly like that.
Why do you think so many people struggle with saying that I am part of the problem in my situation and there's things I need to fix?
Because none of us want to admit that we're the problem. We always want to say that it is somebody else. Playing victim is way easier than taking responsibility every time. Every time. But you also can't grow if you don't. So if you want to stay where you are, keep doing the same things that you're doing. If you want to move forward and you want something better, you have to grow. And growing is painful. I mean, so I have, like I said, I have two kids. So when my youngest is 9, my oldest is 19, first and second marriage. But my youngest, like, she's going through a lot of growth spurts right now because she's 9. And so she has a lot of muscle pain and she has a lot of exhaustion. And she's like, so she has all of these things that are showing that she's growing that are painful that she has to go through because that's how your body grows. But when she gets to the other side of that, she's not going to remember any of this. She's just going to be happy that she's a couple inches taller and she can sit in the front seat. But most people don't want to do that. They'd rather just be uncomfortable
I had
in
someone,
where they are.
yeah, I had someone, she was telling me, what did she tell me? She said, we're talking about dating and things of this nature. She was divorced and she has one kid, and I guess there's an estranged relationship with that child. And she messaged me. She was asking me for like just a little bit of advice. We started talking, and she said, "I asked her, okay, so what do you think the problem is that you can't find the type of guy that you want?" And and we're just texting, and she sent me a text. She's like, "Terrain, the reason why I can't get the guy that I want is because I am too good looking." I was like, "Oh, okay, that's a unique problem to have." I was like, "That's unfortunate." She's like, "Yes, it is." I was like, "Do me a favor." She's like, "What?" "Send me a picture. You're sexy. You're so gorgeous. You can't get the man that you want." It's like, well, I was like, no. You said that the reason why you can't get the man that you want is because you're too attractive. So in my mind, I'm thinking, because I know what she looks like, but in my mind, I'm thinking like you think you're model type level, right? Like you think you're, I'm going to age myself here. You think you're like Beyonce and Angelina Jolie and all these other people, Jennifer Aniston, right? Like you think as soon as you walk into whatever building you walk into, guys are taking off their wedding rings and trying to be with you, right? So it's like, well, I was like, that's what you mean. I was like, here's the problem when it comes to dating that a lot of people don't admit. This is something that Dana touched on, is that if you can't find the type of guy or girl that you want, the problem is da, 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 you. You are the problem. It is not them. And here's why. People get married every single day. You don't. So is it really them or is it you? What I did in my 20s after I realized that I need to make a lot of changes, I stood in front of the mirror. And this is what I tell some of the women I work with. And I said, and I had an honest conversation with myself. And I said, these are the things I don't like about myself. These are the things I like about myself. These are the things that's preventing me from getting what I want because this is what I want. What I ultimately wanted, which is what I would argue most people want, is I want to spend my life until the twilight of my life with someone that I love and someone that's going to support me. Right. And I was getting in my own way of that. So I had to make changes in my life. It wasn't that my hair was whatever, I got the beard or it wasn't any of that superficial stuff. It was the person that I am. Right. So when I had this conversation with her, and when I mentioned that and I gave her that example, when I started sharing that, the conversation died, which I expected because she didn't want to hear it. Right. But
I
sometimes we
mean,
have to
that
hear that.
happens.
It does, right? So when you mention that people, it's easier to be the victim, for how long do you think these people will stay in the victim mentality? Because 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, do you think that they will ever get out of it?
So I have a quick answer for that. They will stay in that mentality for as long as they feel comfortable.
So
There
we have
is
to
no
make
set
them
time.
uncomfortable.
They have to make themselves uncomfortable. It's not anybody else. It is nothing outside of you. It is all you. There comes a point in time where, so my second husband, he is he is happy with the life that he has. It does not have to change that much, and he would be perfectly fine with that forever. He's content, and that's what makes him happy. I was changing and transforming and doing all of these things, and it made me want to do even more. So when I started healing and I started growing and I started focusing on this area of my life and making improvements, then I wanted to go to another area of my life and make improvements. I wanted to keep growing, and I wanted a partner that wanted that same thing, and he didn't. And that's essentially one of the things that tore my marriage up, is we just wanted completely different things. He was fine with the way things were, and I wasn't. I wanted more. And until, again, until I healed those things in myself, and I started looking at qualities in a person, not physical attributes of a person. So when I started doing my healing, I do a lot of journaling. I listen to a lot of like self-help type podcasts. I listen to hypnosis videos that help me a lot. I did a lot of healing through that. And also I would journal about different podcasts that I listened to. And then I would go back and I would reread them and I would listen to me. And so I kind of just kept going on that. But what I would find is that I would grow and grow and grow, but then I would stop and I would still keep dating these people, and they were all different types of people. I mean, I have dated every color of the rainbow. I have dated a vast majority of ages. I've dated people in their 20s. I've dated people in their 50s. I've dated everything in between for a very long time. My sweet spot, the men who were very attracted to me seemed to be the ages of like 27 and like 34, and I was in my 40s. So I'm like, not hating that, but also you're in different stages of your life too. So, those were not people that I was going to have long-term relationships, but the relationships that I had with some of those men did help me on my healing journey in their own way. They gave me something that I took to the next level that I went to. So I feel like the way to find the best partner truly is to think about what you want in a partner and really think about the attributes of that person. So for me, because I've gone through this health change, because I've healed the things that I've healed, there is a lifestyle that I live. And in order to have a true partner, I need someone who lives a similar lifestyle. It doesn't have to be exactly the same, but I want somebody who's going to be active. My second husband is a computer person and very analytical and plays video games and board games, and those are not things that I do. I want to be out. I want to be doing things. I want to be hiking. I want to be kayaking. I want to be whatever. Going to places. I like art. I like music. I like being around people in short bursts. So I decided that I was going to wait for the person who I essentially made a checklist of attributes that I was looking for in a person. And when I would meet somebody, I would start going through my list and I'm like, okay, what does this person meet and what do they not? And if they don't meet it, is it something that I think they will? And what I kept finding was that I would find people that would meet some of them, but not all of them. And because of where I was, I would accept that. And I'd be like, well, maybe my bar is just too high, right? Maybe I want someone that doesn't exist. Well, turns out the more I healed myself, the better caliber of people I was attracting. And so eventually I ended up meeting somebody who essentially marks off almost every single box on my list. And that's the first time that's ever happened for me. So I think really on top of looking at what you're doing to stifle what your wants and goals and needs are, you also have to think about, okay, what do I want to accept and what do I not want to accept from the other person? And you got to set that boundary for yourself and you have to stick to it. And if you do that and you consistently do it, then those are the people that you'll start to call in, and it makes it a lot easier to spot the ones that are not for you and send them happily on their way, because it doesn't have to be one person's fault or the other. Like I went on a lot of dates where the person was like, oh, well, I'm not this and I'm not that and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, it's okay. We're just having a coffee. Like we're just saying hello. We're not getting married tomorrow. Like it's fine. Like we're just getting to know each other. So there's a lot of pressure in a lot of areas that I think people put on themselves that you really don't have to. It's live in the present, and that's the best thing that you can do.
But Dana, I set boundaries. I did the journal thing. My bed has been cold for months and months and months. What do you expect me to do? It's Friday
You're
and I'm alone.
you're missing a piece. There is something that is blocking you still. You can do 4 out of 5 things, but if you don't do the 5th thing, it doesn't matter if you've done the 4. So
That's a
that's
good
why I
point.
say, if you're still not getting the results that you want in anything, there's something that you're doing that's keeping you from getting it. And you got to sit down and you got to figure out, okay, like that's where you got to be honest with yourself. And sometimes you need outside help. Like sometimes you can't always see it for yourself. So you need to reach out to somebody else. You need to reach out to a friend to get a different perspective sometimes. I've had to do that a lot of times. I have several people in my life that I'm very close to where I'll call them and I'll be like, look, this is what's going on. Am I missing something? Because I've done X, Y, and Z, and this keeps happening and I'm not seeing it. And sometimes the perspective that they give me is exactly what I need. So sometimes it's admitting that you don't have all the answers and you need to reach out to somebody else to find them.
I did that maybe 2 months ago, 3 months ago. I bounced an idea, I had an idea. It was actually someone I interviewed. I bounced an idea off of her, and we exchanged contact details. And it turns out she lives in the next city. She lives in a city next to me. I was like,
Oh
oh,
my gosh.
small world. we had no idea. I definitely didn't know. I don't know if she did, but so we spoke. And we spoke for maybe like an hour, hour and a half, and I was just bouncing ideas off her. So even someone like me who works with women, like we still need someone to talk to because I couldn't. I needed a perspective of someone that maybe didn't have a connection to me, like a friendship, right? Like I
Backstory.
exactly right. So
Mhm.
um I did bounce ideas off of my married friends. My single friends was like, oh, terrain, there's all these different women. Let's go out Friday night, Saturday night, and we'll go find one. I was like, I don't want to find a stray. You know what I mean? I'm not here to collect like a garbage man. And ladies, I'm not calling you trash. I'm just saying I'm not here to roam the streets. Like I'm 20 years old, alcohol fueled, and whatever I find is whatever I find. So,
Right.
right. So I was bouncing ideas and it was an interesting conversation because she was saying something similar to you. And she said that um, why don't you figure out what it is that you want from this person if they match right what you want. And I was like, yeah, I did that. She's like, but ask them. Like what I was doing, like when I had my own checklist, I was saying, okay, this person matches this. This is what I'm looking for, essentially, right? But she turned around. She's like, why don't you ask them if they can meet it? I was like, okay, yeah, that's interesting conversation because usually I don't know a lot of men that ask that question. Like usually girls will ask that, right? So I was like, okay, is this a girl telling me what girls do and she's trying to like tell me, to do it? Like I was a little confused, but I was like, I haven't tried it, so why don't I try it? And it was a good conversation because when I went up to someone, I started to ask them, I was like, okay, yes, like there isn't questions for the most part when it comes to that. They're not gender or sex specific. If you want to get to know something, just ask. Instead of you thinking what the answer is, just ask the person. Right? What are your thoughts?
Well, and what better way to try and get to know somebody than to ask them to talk about themselves? Are you
Yeah,
kidding me?
like it's like sticking a
Everybody
microphone in
wants to
someone's
talk about
face.
themselves.
Like, I should have brought this
Absolutely.
baby, right? Just be like, hey, talk. It's not recording. Actually, I
I'm,
should
I
record
mean,
it.
honestly, I will tell you, I've gone on a lot of dates, and there's a lot of men that will sit there and talk about themselves. There's been a lot of times, and you and I just met, and we've talked a lot. I've talked a lot in this conversation. I am a big talker. Um, but there's a lot of dates that I went on where I could tell in the beginning that they weren't really interested in getting to know me, that they were interested in spending time with me, but they really didn't want to get to know me. So they would sit there and they would talk about themselves the entire time. And I guarantee you, I did not go on a second date with any of the men that did that. Because why would I want to go on a second date with somebody that didn't even take the time to get to know me? It's like you're going and meeting a car salesman who's trying to sell you a lemon and they can't stop talking about how great the car is because they're trying to convince you instead of asking you what you need or what you're looking for. What kind of car do you want? They didn't do that. They talked about them. Well, that's not interesting to me. And I'm not saying that it's not interesting to get to know another person, but you have to be very self-aware. And I had to do the same thing because I would get nervous and I would just start rambling. And my brain, like I have ADHD, so like my brain would just start going and going and going. And I had to really that was one of my traits that was difficult. And I had to be really aware that I had to pull that back and let the other person talk. And so what I started doing was asking them questions, just like the person you were talking to was saying. So when you ask somebody else, it cuts out that narrative that you have in your head because I guarantee you, whatever you're thinking in your head is not what they're thinking. It's 100% not.
I wonder if
It
that's
could
like
be
a
similar.
feeling. Yeah, I wonder if that's a feeling for men, right? Like for me, like I like to listen, right? So if I were to ask you, like let's say if you and I went on a date, if I were to ask you a question, I would want you to talk because I would like to listen to it, right? But I'm asking questions, maybe not necessarily like, yeah, to get to know you a little bit, but that isn't my focus. Okay, I'm going to ask this question to get to know her, right? I think maybe that's like a difference with men and women because women could talk and talk and talk and ask questions. How are you feeling? What about stuff like that? Where men is more like how many times have you gone on a date? You probably ask a man a question is like very to the point. Well, you know what? Yeah, today's a good day. Like,
So
tell
yeah,
me
I've
more.
had both. Right. So I've had both. So I've had the men who talk incessantly about themselves, and then I have the men who are more introverted, and it's like pulling teeth to have a conversation with them. Like, I want to know what you're thinking, but if you give me one word answers, it's really hard to do that. But that also made me work a little harder in the questions because then I started thinking about questions that were not yes or no answers. So when you
Open-ended
ask somebody an
questions.
open-ended question, it forces them to answer in a certain way. So, I mean, it's all a mind game. It really is. But truly, if you just sit and get to know somebody, it's not that difficult. We make it so much harder than it has to be. We really do. We overthink it so much. And as far as like men versus women, talking versus talking, I've seen it on both sides. I don't know that it's necessarily like a gender issue. I think that there's a lot of women that are more comfortable with expressing themselves, and there's a lot of men that are not as comfortable expressing themselves. And to me, that is unfortunate because I think that there's a lot of men that would like to express themselves more, but they have had a lifetime of people telling them, oh, no, you're a man. We don't do that. You're not allowed to be emotional. But you know what? Everybody has emotions. So we all need to express them. We all, in whatever manner they are. So why should one gender have more acceptance for embracing that versus another? To me, that doesn't make any sense. I think that if that's all internal work that people have to do, in my opinion.
Yeah, I've been the type to I'm very expressive with my like what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking, but not in the form of questions.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like if I'm thinking something, I'll say, okay, this is what I'm thinking, this is why I'm thinking it. Right? Like getting used to asking it in a question so I can get like feedback from the person so they can maybe open up a little bit more. So I'll give you an example. So if I'm going through something, let's say like right now, I'm having some difficulty with some of my single friends, right? And I'll tell them that the reason why I can't spend a lot of time with you is because our life doesn't align anymore in the way that I want my life to go. Like I'll say like that, right? But some people say ask it in a question. That's where I have the difficulty, right? Because it's not, and this is gonna sound so bad. I don't really care what they have to think when I'm saying that, right? Because that is me separating it because I'm doing that based on their behavior. So the feedback would be that my life isn't aligned anymore, but how do you think your life is aligned? Right. And then they can give me their feedback. But the thing is, I look at it as if I've reached that point where you're separating from the person or if you're divorcing from the person, what answer can they really give you to stop that?
I think that really you can't really answer that. I think that each relationship has its own merit and communication style and personalities. There's too many factors I feel like to give a cut and dry answer. But I think that a big thing is that if you start living your life in the present, like if you are present, and this is what I've noticed with a lot of people, people are distracted. Okay. So when you sit down with somebody, let's say you go on a first date and it's coffee, you sit down with somebody. If there's a lull in the conversation, it is so often that people will pick up their phone in the middle of just sitting. It's just the two of you. They'll pick up their phone and they'll start going through their phone. And to me, that's like the most disrespectful thing that you could do. Because for me, my time is valuable. Like if I'm spending time with you, that's taking me away from something else. And I expect you to be present. Now, a lot of people listen to respond instead of hearing. And those are two different things. So when you're listening to respond, while the other person is talking, you're thinking about what you're going to say when they stop talking. But if you are in the present moment and you are actually hearing what the person is saying, then it could allow you the opportunity to calm your mind down enough that when they say something, you could have a genuine question that you want to know the answer to. And maybe the reason why you don't want to know the response is because you're listening to respond and you think you know what their answer is going to be rather than listening to what their actual answer is.
Dana, we are aging ourselves by saying that. How can you go on a date and not pick up your phone?
I mean, I was guilty of it too. I was the type of person that if there was a lull in the conversation, it made me very uncomfortable. Like silence in a conversation made me have anxiety. So I would want to fill that silence with something. And picking up your phone is a way to fill the silence. I was guilty of it too. And then what I started doing was before I even went on the date, I would turn my phone on do not disturb. And or like if I knew the person was on their way or whatever, once they were there, whatever. Once the date began, I would turn my phone off so that nobody could contact me. Because I think the biggest thing is people get distracted and they don't recognize that behavior because it's just part of their everyday life. Everything is so easily accessed today. It's so easily accessed. And like, I am a Gen Xer, I am a tail end Gen Xer. But I grew up, I mean, when I was in high school, I had a pager. I didn't even have a cell phone until after I graduated high school and I went to go work for T-Mobile and got a cell phone. So, like, yes, I've had cell phones for the last a lot of years, and we're not going to say how many specifically, but I also lived in a time where the internet was not, I had dial up, okay? I had to listen to the AOL dial up where you had to put the disc in the computer just to get access. So maybe it's a little bit easier for me, but I think that the value of being present with someone else and giving them your full attention is priceless. I really think it is. And I think too many people don't live in the present and you miss so much when you don't.
Yeah, I'm a millennial, and I agree. I agree. It's interesting. I saw a couple. I think they're on a date, and they both had their phone in the air, so they wouldn't be like trying to hide it. They're trying to communicate back and forth, but they had their phone in one hand and they were talking. I was like, oh, I gotta give them credit. They're both able to multitask, but I couldn't imagine being on a date and the person is distracted because in my mind, and I'm a paranoid person, I would be thinking she's planning her next date.
Right.
Right after this one is date number two.
She's already on the dating app swiping left on somebody else.
I know,
like,
right? Oh my God. One of my friends, his thumb
we're
is
like
flat
literally in the middle.
because all he does is swipe, right? He'll swipe on the toilet. He'll swipe when he's eating. Like he has flat thumbs, ladies and gentlemen. It's gross. Have you seen a flat thumb before? Ugh, scary. So
Does he
Dana,
have
as
carpal
we
tunnel?
he's probably there. Like I haven't talked to him. He's one of my single friends. Him and I really don't. This was years ago that his thumb was flat. So he probably doesn't even have thumbs now. Just call him Mr. Eight. But it's I'm going to hell. It's so bad. It's so bad.
It's all in good fun. It's all in good fun.
Yeah, I know. As we close, like what advice do you want to give our audience to help them along the ways, either seeing themselves in a better light, from a romantic standpoint or even a physical standpoint, or of course, emotional, because seeing yourself emotionally doesn't get talked about a lot, but it does happen.
I mean, honestly, the thing that I would say is again, and I've said it several times, and it's that if you don't like what's going on in your life, you can change it. Everybody has the opportunity to change it. Now, how that presents itself and how you do it is going to look different for each person. We don't all start in the same place. So the obstacles that we have to overcome, the ways that we have to conquer these things are all going to be different. But it just takes one step. Like it just takes you deciding that you don't want to do this anymore. I'll give you an example. when I got divorced from my second husband, my whole identity was wrapped up in being a wife and a mother. And when I got divorced, yes, I was still a mother, but I was not in the same capacity that I was. And when I had to sit by myself and neither one of my kids were there, and I just had to sit alone with my thoughts, that was awful. And I literally had to, I'm not even joking, the way that I started that part of my journey, which was 4 years, 3 or 4 years into my weight loss journey, I literally Googled, how do you get self-esteem? I had no idea. I had no idea where to even start. That's how low of a point that I was at. I'm like, I have no self-esteem. I don't know how to build that up. And I was almost 40 at the time. So I should have known, I felt like. But because of what I had experienced and because of how I was broken, I didn't. So I listened to a hypnosis and I would go out on my breaks and I would listen to it over and over and over. I would go to sleep and listen to it because I'm like, the more that I can feed this into my brain, the more that it's going to help me. So the first thing to do is figure out what's not working. The second thing is to figure out what you want, even if it's just one small little thing, like I want better self-esteem. Start there. Because once you reach that goal, you can set another one. And once you reach that one, you can set another one. And you just build on that. You create this strong foundation and you can have the life that you want. But it starts with you wanting to make the change and committing to it. Because if you don't commit, if you're 1 foot in and 1 foot out, you're not going to be successful. So if you do it, you have to commit 100% to doing it through the hardest parts, because it always gets the hardest before you break through whatever that behavior is. The universe will throw everything it can at you to make sure that you really learn that lesson. And then once you've learned that lesson, you can tell and you can move forward. So my best advice would be, think about what you want, get a strategy on how to start working on that. If you don't know what to do, reach out, look for resources, either for your, like by yourself and looking at books, in joining different groups, in finding a coach, in finding, like, you have to figure out what's going to work for you. But it's that first step. And the first step is the hardest one. But once you take that first step, I'm telling you, you can't stop. Once you start succeeding, it's kind of addictive. But it's a good kind of addictive because it makes you healthier in the end.